Now let's look at the package kit GUI. This application is an overlay to Yum, and Yum is an overlay to RPM. So let's label this section package kit. And it features, first and foremost, a GUI for package management. And it is a front end to Yum. And it is also extensible via Yum's extensibility via plugins. So supports Yum plugins. And it runs a variety of utilities to carry out its duties. It is the application that notifies you in the system notification area in the event of security updates for your system. So if there are packages that are needed, or in this case, one message from the package manager could not contact source Linux CBT Serve 1, so it'll be disabled. And that was when Linux CBT Serve 1 had Apache disabled recently. So it is a front end to Yum, and it allows us to manage packages. So let's define some tasks, explore the interface. And you can run it directly from the command line if you'd like, or just look for the add remove programs application or add remove software in administration. If you're not authenticated as root, you'll be prompted to authenticate. Now this lists or indicates that the group list was disabled, so it was unable to get a particular list from the various repository, but nonetheless now it's able to build the various categories on the left. So note, on the left we have a search box. We can search for specific applications, which will search all packages by default. So supposing we wanted to look for DOS to Unix, this will search all the packages and give us in a nice GUI window the description and some metadata, including the license, the project, its size when it's installed on the disk, and so on. You can choose to install the application directly if you'd like. Now currently DOS to Unix should be installed already, so we should not have the ability to install it. So you can search for packages, you can clear the list and have it display all packages if you'd like from a particular group. There are package collections that are defined, but this was the list that was giving errors, so it didn't return it. There's a list of newest packages, but currently there are no new packages, just the original source tree that we provided from the DVD. And no packages have been selected. All packages is the same alias. It shows you everything alphabetized. All of the roughly 7 gigs worth of packages included with the distribution. This is the same error with respect to listing the various packages, just a repeat of the interface. Now packages are arranged into various groups such as text editors, desktop utilities, and so on. Notice that our packages aren't showing up as we navigate. One way to work around this is to refresh the package list. So these are the software sources. Let's just go ahead and refresh. And it prompts us to authenticate to the system as root in order to refresh the list of packages that are enabled on our repositories. Now note it returns that it was unable to find the package software sources. Let's look at what it's trying to find. Repo data file lists.xml.gz. Let's see if Linux CBT Serve 1 has that listed. In fact, we init 0 Linux CBT Serve 1, so it's bound to throw an error regarding consulting that particular source. So if we take a look at the software sources, we have the ability here to disable software sources. So we can tell it to disable Linux CBT Serve 1 for now, because it will consult it and it's currently off. So it isn't load balancing, if you will. Let's go back into System, refresh package lists. Again, it prompts us to authenticate, and this time it'll consult Linux CBT Serve 2 to get a list of packages from that file list XML file to populate everything for us. Let's maximize this window. We should note that as a result of disabling Linux CBT Serve 1, the package kit utility has updated the config file for that repository. Let's take a look. etc yum repos.d And if we take a look at the contents of Linux CVT serve 1, we see that an option that we did not include, enabled equals 0, which means it's disabled, has been set as a consequence of disabling that particular source. Now, the categories aren't coming up. However, all packages do come up. So we can search for packages that way by looking at the all packages. The only caveat to this is that it lists all of the packages, which can be quite cumbersome. So it's a really weak interface in that respect. But you can nonetheless search for packages and install them from this particular view. For example, aid intrusion detection, although it's not in the security section, is selected. You can select a number of applications, but since it's here, we just picked it. And you pick a number of other applications as you would with any GUI, and then off you go to apply, which will cause the package to be installed via yum and make it available in our environment. So it'll pull it using the HTTP repository. Let's go ahead and authenticate to unlock this particular capability, and yum will be called to install the package for us momentarily. In the left we see status of what's occurring, and now the interface is being updated. Now let's search again for aid since we just installed it, and do a find. This will search through the list and it should show that it is installed. In fact, let's check our filters. It's probably set to items that are available. Let's go to no filter because available means items that have not been installed. So here we see that it's checked, which means that it's installed. So any item that's already installed, such as DOS to Unix, for example, will reflect that it's installed, or Unix to DOS. Or, as we played with earlier on, grep will show that it is currently installed in the system. And to uninstall a package, simply deselect the package and it'll be removed. So for example, let's query the aid package and we should see that it's installed. And of course, if we query the install information of the package, let's query info about it. That'll give us some metadata, and it includes when it was installed. So relative to our current time, roughly a minute, 13 seconds or so ago. So that's flagged in the database, the RPM database. Now let's search for aid and remove it. Typical processes. Again, it's not as full-featured as yum or RPM, but nonetheless it provides some functionality. So now that we've deselected it, we'll click apply. And of course this will remove the package. Notice it reads resolving dependencies. That's yum's work. So with yum's help, it'll resolve that package's dependencies. So to remove aid, other packages that depend on it must also be removed, and it shows the list, which includes just aid itself. And in order to install or remove packages, you must authenticate. So this will allow us to remove the package. So the GUI is nothing glitzy, nothing glamorous. The typical Red Hat GUI is weak, but nonetheless functional to some degree. And at least you can access it and see what it's like, which is why the command line is the way to go. So now aid has been removed from the system. So again, the categories aren't coming up. However, all packages come up, and we can search for names that come to mind in a GUI-like fashion instead of constantly referencing RPM from the command line followed by, or yum search followed by the names or patterns that match a particular package, for example. So that's how this particular utility works. Again, if you close it, it's available to you as from the main menu, that is. Let's scroll up towards the top to get our menu here. In fact, we'll just set this to no longer auto hide. That's no longer necessary. And ditto for the base panel. That was just a temporary configuration to allow us to fit one of our windows in that wouldn't fit, which is often the case when you're working with a limited resolution space, as we are 800 by 600. So again, to access it, it's system administration and it's add remove software, and this brings it up. Software update also links to it, but that supposes that you have an RHEL network connectivity subscription option, which will allow you to get updates, security updates in particular, for packages that are currently installed. So again, it's not able to get the groups list No groups available in any repository. So that's why it's not showing the packages into their various groups. But again, the sources are set so that Linux CBT Serve 1 is turned off, and then we can turn it on at a later point, which of course begs the question, if we were to modify the text file, would it impact the GUI's view of whether or not the source is turned on? And it will if you reload it, or refresh the package list. So let's SU in, for example, as a separate task and modify Linux CBT Serve 1, setting enabled to 1 instead of 0, and then package kit can always change it as it sees fit. Now let's check the software sources, see what comes up, and this is going to read directly from the file. So without even restarting package kit, it's read the file directly to determine that the server is available. Now notice no ability here to prioritize, at least via the GUI, which server is to be used. So again, it really is a weak interface, but nonetheless you can enable or disable, which is basic functionality. And let's look at all packages again. Let's see what comes up. Let's do a search to see whether or not TCP dump has been installed. Probably has been as a consequence, but this will bring it up. Let's click on find. It's not an active search, so you'll have to click on find each time or press enter. So TCP dump is installed. One TCP dump 14.4, and information about it is there, so that means it's available as a utility for us to explore. Let's see what it's got for OpenSSH. It's just a quick tool for querying the database to see what's installed on your system. So an open source implementation, 5.3 is the version that's included of SSH protocol versions 1 and 2, as well as ancillary packages including a passphrase dialog for OpenSSH and X, so when you're in X applications and you need to authenticate via SSH, then you're prompted. Or let's say you need to authenticate to use your protected private key, then you'll be prompted to authenticate. And this package contains the client applications for SSH, such as the SSH client itself, as well as others like SFTP, SCP, and SSH copy ID. So at least it gives us a little window into the packages that are installed rather quickly than using yum, but I still prefer to use yum or RPM wherever possible. This package actually contains a server daemon, SSH server, and the name is reflected, so you can always from the shell query using RPM. So you can query open or just query all grep, since the name isn't precise, and this will return anything that has an OpenSSH prefix, including the OpenSSH-server package. So that metadata is just being brought into this application, and that's everything that pertains to SSH, OpenSSH that is. But if you search for SSH, you're bound to find other packages that pertain to SSH but aren't named OpenSSH. So let's take a look. For example, here are some items that come up. Pure Java implementation of SSH2, so that's a Java SSH. A KDE version of SSH AskPass, so if you're using KDE for your desktop environment, then this will prompt you for authentication when necessary, when you need to use your key or otherwise. A library implementing SSH, the SSH packages themselves, the proper. Here is an SSH2 protocol library for Python, and so on. So when you use this interface, at least it gives you some quick graphical insight to possibilities that surround strings that you're searching for. For example, how many TFTP packages are included in the original DVD or the original set? Well, if you do a search for TFTP, you'll see. So here's a utility, curl, which is installed by default even on Mac OS X systems, for interacting with FTP, HTTP, and various other types of servers, maybe even TFTP. TCP wrappers, which can protect TFTP, and then a TFTP client and a TFTP server. So this gives you a sense from the original installation sources what sort of TFTP support is present across the various packages that are available. So it's a quick way to go in, search, test, see what's available, etc. Now the interface does have a few options. So for example, In this window here, select, you can navigate to the project homepage, you can install the package, remove it if it's already installed, or just click apply after having deselected or selected it. If it's a program, you can run it. If it's a graphical program, for example, what does it depend on, for example, and that's directly passed to Yum, and this brings it up. So 10 additional packages are required for TFTP server. So in order to install it, you'll need to ensure that these particular programs are in place, which of course Yum will take care of, but if you use RPM, then it will prompt you for whatever is missing. So it tells us here that TFTP requires init tab, basic directory, layout of a Linux system, born again shell, SE Linux, libraries for TCP wrapper, since TFTPD is invoked via TCP wrappers, Zinetd, which is a replacement for inetd, core utilities. So these 10 things are required in the event that you'd like to run this particular program. How about the client? So again, back to selection, and this particular client depends upon the following text-based library, GNU libc libraries, and a library for editing typed command lines, redline support, which many programs depend upon, including Perl, for example, when using the CPAN interface. So you can tell rather quickly what the program needs. Required by is a converse, so let's get that going. And no packages require TFTP, whereas other packages like core utils and so on are definitely required by other programs, or grep, for example. If you'd like to see a file list for the package, again, this is just like running an RPM query package list against the particular package. So this package installs these 7 files, with the main binary being the TFTP client, documentation, and a man page, which is also documentation. For the server, again, let's navigate to selection and get a file list from this, which is a query package list. So the server includes a Zinetd TFTP entry which controls the service, the main binary in.tftpd in user sbin, and various documentation, and a varlib tftp boot directory where the files that are to be served over TFTP are placed. So when you set up TFTP later on, this is where we'll place items such as our Cisco router config file that we upload or download. So the interface makes it easy to do the sorts of things that we do with RPM anyway, such as getting lists, seeing what it depends on and what requires it, installing it if necessary. For example, let's go ahead and install the TFTP client. You can either checkbox apply or just navigate to selection install, which checks it for you, and then you still have to click on apply, so might as well click on checkbox then apply. That will install the TFTP client, and then from the shell, of course, we will be able to confirm it. Let's just authenticate so that it allows us to do what we need to do and navigate to the shell. RPM query info TFTP, and there we should see that relative to the current time it was installed within the same minute 3 seconds ago. Its version, its release, when it was built, the box in which it was built on, a description, signature URL, etc. Typical metadata included with packages. And if we check the path, which TFTP, it's in user bin, RPM query file user bin TFTP will reveal that it belongs to the TFTP package, and as of now it's on our system and we can make use of it. So the selections window gives you that ability, install, remove, etc. Now in filters, for install, for example, you can have it set to no filter where everything's shown, or packages that are available, or only packages that are installed. So you can search based on whether they're installed, not installed, or just search everything, both installed and not installed. Development, you can also filter in that realm. Graphical, same thing. Free packages, same thing. Sub-packages only show one package, not sub-packages if you hide sub-packages, but often it's good to see the full hierarchy of package dependencies. Software log, as you install and remove items, Yum keeps track of that, and PackageKit is able to display the log to us to tell us what's happened. So here it shows that we installed TFTP, we installed aid, and we removed aid. So it keeps a log of who has done what on the system. And of course, we've looked at refresh package lists and software sources. Now notice, both sources are currently enabled, and we were still able to install TFTP despite the fact that Linux CBT Serve 1 is turned off. And that's because when it comes down to it, Yum will simply use the server that's available. And that's what happened. It used the server that was available. Whereas we saw errors concerning the inability to, via the package kit interface, to communicate with Linux CBT Serve 1. But at install time, it will still carry out the install for you. So let's quit. That's a little bit about package kit. We won't be using this utility. We'll use exclusively Yum and RPM to manage the packages on our system. Let's save our documentation and move on.